Welcome to this tutorial for UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center's Greenhouse Gas Abatement Cost Model, also known as the GACMO tool. The GACMO tool is a useful resource for climate analysis, providing assessment of climate-related data, enabling users to investigate climate scenarios, assess future impacts, and develop informed climate strategies. The presentation is the introductory tutorial for the GACMO tool. This tutorial will assist you in getting started with GACMO. The content of this presentation is as follows. I will start with the brief introduction of the GACMO tool, follow with the explanation of the new version of the GACMO tool, input data requirements, use of the GACMO tool, main steps to develop the GACMO tool, and outputs of the GACMO tool. The second part of the presentation is methodology for estimating greenhouse gas emissions projections using the GACMO tool. I will go through the approaches used for the calculations in GACMO for estimating greenhouse gas emissions in the business as usual scenario and in the mitigation scenario. The final part of this presentation is conclusions. Let's get started with the basic concepts of the GACMO tool. GACMO is an abbreviation to a Greenhouse Gas Abatement Cost Model. It accounts not only for GHG emissions, but also for the costs. Main purpose of the tool is to define NDC target level. It is an Excel-based bottom-up modeling tool used for greenhouse gas emissions projections. It is based on the IPCC and CDM methodologies. Thus, the GACMO tool methodology is in line with the international methodologies for estimating GHG emissions. The tool is available for free on the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center website. One of the main features of the tool is that the user defines mitigation options and their scale. UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center has released a new version of the GACMO tool. The development of this new version of GACMO has been supported by the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, ICAT. The new version of the GACMO tool follows a stepwise approach for model development. Most of the spreadsheets are hidden. Navigation throughout the table is done by clicking on the buttons. The new version provides detailed guidance in each spreadsheet. Also, the user has an opportunity to view the results in PDF reports presenting the main results of the tool. It also contains an improved interface through improved tables and figures throughout the model. To develop the GACMO tool for a country, city, or a region, the user has to insert input data. First of all, basic country data, such as population and GDP. Key assumptions, such as grid emission factor, energy prices, emission factors, calorific values, etc. One of the important sets of input data is the energy balance table. It represents production and consumption of fuels by sectors for the start year. Another input data parameters include GHG emissions for non-energy sectors such as agriculture, forestry, waste, and industrial processes. User also needs to insert data on fugitive emissions and non-CO2 emissions from energy combustion sectors. Growth rates is an important input data requirement in the GACMO. It is used by the tool to construct business as usual scenario. Also, user specifies mitigation options. User needs to insert the data on the units penetrating in the projected years, and this data will be used by the GACMO to construct mitigation scenario. And finally, technical and economical parameters of each and individual mitigation option needs to be adjusted in GACMO for the country-specific context. So the technology spreadsheets contain various parameters such as solar installation, annual distance of a transport, number of hours usage of lighting, investment costs, etc. GACMO tool can be used in many ways. First, it can be used to estimate greenhouse gas emissions projections for business as usual scenario and for the mitigation scenario in the years 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2050. It allows to analyze percent reduction of the GHG emissions compared to the business as usual scenario for NDC development or update. It also provides an estimate of GHG reduction and cost for each mitigation option compared to the technology used in the baseline. It estimates expected and achieved emission reduction from each and individual mitigation measure. It also provides an overview of total mitigation effort, total GHG reduction, total investment, and total annual cost. This slide provides an overview of the use of GACMO tool. GACMO tool has been used by many countries for various reports, studies, national climate change mitigation strategies, and action plans. For example, Albania has used it for its first national communication, second, third, and fourth national communications. Maldives, Cameroon, Ghana, and Niger used GACMO for development of its national determined contributions. Maldives, Albania, and Ghana used it for biennial update reports. It also has been used for national action plan or long-term strategy, for example, by Maldives and Tunisia. It has also been used for regional analysis in the case of Latin America and West Asia. Many countries are using GACMO tool to prepare their first biennial transparency report under the Paris Agreement. GACMO tool can be used for NDC planning and tracking. It can be also helpful to identify NDC target levels, for example by estimating economy-wide GHG reduction target as well as in quantifying the sectoral targets, which will be in line with the overall economy-wide target. It can be also a useful tool to select an appropriate list of mitigation options. For example, marginal abatement revenue curve can be used to select the set of mitigation options based on the cost and emission reduction. And finally, it can be used for tracking the progress of the NDC achievement. It can be helpful to estimate expected and achieved emission reduction from each and individual mitigation measure. GACMO tool can be used for the preparation of the biennial transparency report, which is a transparency reporting requirement under the Paris Agreement. One of the sections of the BTR is the information necessary to track progress made in implementing and achieving NDCs. This section includes 3 common tabular format or CTF tables. CTF tables 7, 8, and 9 include projections of GHG emissions in with measures scenario, projection of GHG emission in with additional measures scenario, and projection of GHG emissions in without measures scenario. GACMO tool can be used to develop projections of GHG emissions in those 3 scenarios. Thus, GACMO tool can be used for the preparation of the biennial transparency report. GACMO tool can be also used to estimate impact of an individual policy and measure. As an example, one of the CTF tables of the biennial transparency report is the CTF table 5, with the mitigation policies, measures, actions, and plans. GACMO tool can be used to estimate expected and achieved emission reduction from individual mitigation policies and measures. There are 9 main steps and 9 corresponding spreadsheets in the GACMO tool. In the steps 1 to 4, user provides the input data for the start year and for the business as usual scenario. In the following steps 5 to 6, user can analyze the results for the business as usual scenario. In the step 7, user needs to provide information on the mitigation options appropriate for his or her own country. In the step 8, user can analyze the results of the GACMO tool, and in the step 9, track the progress towards the implementation. This is the first introductory tutorial of the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center on the new version of the GACMO tool. You can also watch the second video tutorial as it focuses on the GACMO interface in an Excel. In the steps from 1 to 4, user provides all the input data related to the start year and business as usual scenario for his or her own country, such as country name, currency, start year, exchange rate, fuel prices, grid emission factor, etc. Following the steps 1 to 4, user can view the results for the business as usual scenario in the steps 5 and 6. No need to change any input data here because the GACMO tool estimates all the results for the BAU scenario automatically. Step 7 is to develop mitigation scenario, and here the user provides the set of mitigation options for the future projected years. For each mitigation option, there is a table with technical and economical parameters in the technology spreadsheets. User can click on the title of the mitigation options in blue, and the GACMO tool will automatically redirect to the relevant table in the technology spreadsheet. To improve the quality of the mitigation scenario, we recommend the user to carefully review all the technical and economical parameters in the technology spreadsheet so that they represent country-specific context. There are 26 spreadsheets in the GACMO, referred to as technology spreadsheets. Each spreadsheet corresponds to a type of mitigation option. This technology spreadsheet includes default parameters from the CDM database. For one mitigation option, there may be different tables for 2020, 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2050. User can insert data or modify default parameters only in the cells which are highlighted in yellow. While some input data can be similar in many countries, other input data can vary from country to country. In the step 8, user can view and analyze the results of the GACMO tool. This spreadsheet includes GHG emissions projections for the business as usual scenario and for the mitigation scenario. And it might be also frequently the case that the user will need to go back to previous steps to change and revise some input data after analyzing the results in the step 8. Final spreadsheet in the GACMO tool is named tracking. Tracking step is used ex post once the mitigation option has been implemented to monitor the progress in implementing and achieving a country's NDC. The user has to provide the values of implemented mitigation options by years, and the GACMO tool is able to estimate accumulated greenhouse gas emission reduction for the implementation period. The new version of the GACMO tool, the user navigates throughout the spreadsheets by clicking on the buttons. So to follow on the next step, user can click on Go to the next step button. In the step 5, to go back to the previous steps, user can click on the button Go back to step 1 to 4. In the step 7, user can view the marginal abatement curve by clicking on the button Adjust Mark Curve. In the step 7, user can create PDF report by clicking on the button named Make PDF Report. There are also several buttons which will navigate the user throughout the years. By clicking on the 2025 button, user will be able to see the relevant table for the 2025. Similarly, the user can change the units by clicking on the button for terajoules or tons of oil equivalent. What are the main results of the GACMO tool? Total GHG emissions for business as usual scenario and for the mitigation scenario. Sectoral split of GHG emissions by years for the business as usual scenario and for the mitigation scenario. Marginal abatement revenue curve. Finally, for each mitigation option, GACMO tool provides emission reduction and abatement costs. This is the example of the results of the GACMO tool in the case of Lao PDR. Lao PDR has used GACMO tool in its NDC submission. These are the GHG emission projections in the business as usual scenario, in the unconditional scenario, and in a conditional scenario. The results of the GACMO tool can be also viewed by sectors, namely power, industry, transport, households, services, agriculture, fishery, waste, and forestry. Here we can see greenhouse gas emissions projections for the business as usual scenario. Similarly, the results can be viewed for the mitigation scenario. One of the main results of the GACMO tool is the marginal abatement revenue curve, or MAR curve. On the y-axis, it represents the revenue of an option to reduce 1 ton of CO2 equivalent. On the x-axis, it represents GHG emission reduction potential of a mitigation option. The marginal abatement revenue curve can support the user to select mitigation options that provide higher emission reduction at lower cost. So here in this graph, we can see the mitigation options located on the positive side of the y-axis are those ones which have higher revenues than the costs, while mitigation options located on the negative side of the y-axis are mitigation options with higher costs than the revenues. Also, we can compare the widths of the x-axis. So, the mitigation options having larger values on the x-axis represent higher emission reductions. Marginal abatement revenue curve corresponds to a traditional marginal abatement cost curve, which has been inverted. In the case of MAC curve, the curve is based on the costs, while in the case of MAR curve, the curve is based on the revenue. So the MAR curve allows to have a comparison of selected mitigation options in terms of their abatement cost and emission reduction. Thus, it can be a powerful tool to support decision makers in selecting the most efficient mitigation options for the specific country. Now, let's move to the second part of this presentation, which is the methodology for estimating greenhouse gas emissions projections using the GACMO tool. The basic approach for the GACMO to estimate total GHG emission is to take the sum of the following: CO2 emissions from fuel combustion, non-CO2 emissions from energy sector, and GHG emissions from non-energy sectors. This is the approach used in the GACMO tool for the start year and for the projected years. Energy balance and emission factors are provided by the user, and it is used by the GACMO for estimating CO2 emissions from the fuel combustion sectors. Another input data provided by the user is GHG emissions inventory, and it is used by the GACMO to estimate the projections for non-energy sectors. Similarly, the GACMO tool estimates total GHG emissions for the business-as-usual scenario as a sum of CO2 emissions from fuel combustion, non-CO2 emissions from energy sector, and GHG emissions from non-energy sectors. In addition to that, it uses growth rates, and these growth rates are provided by the user for various sectors and various fuels. Thus, growth rates are used to make projections of greenhouse gas emissions towards future years, using start year data as a basis. This slide shows the basic approach for the GACMO tool to estimate CO2 emissions from fuel combustion. CO2 emissions from fuel combustion in the business-as-usual scenario is estimated as a sum of the energy consumption in the business-as-usual scenario by sector and by fuel, multiplied by corresponding emission factor for each sector and each fuel. Energy consumption in the business-as-usual scenario by sector and by fuel is estimated as an energy consumption in the start year by sector by fuel multiplied by corresponding growth rates by sector by fuel. For non-energy sectors and non-CO2 emissions from the energy sector, the approach is the sum of emissions for the start year multiplied by corresponding growth rates of the sector. Next step is the development of the mitigation scenario. Before starting to use GACMO for the mitigation scenario, we recommend the user to formulate the list of mitigation options for one or two mitigation scenarios. Frequently, it would be two mitigation scenarios, unconditional scenario and conditional scenario. It is important for the user to develop the list of mitigation options for each one of the mitigation scenario by the years of the projected period. Current version of the GACMO tool includes 119 predefined mitigation options, and user can select mitigation options applicable for the country. For each mitigation option chosen, the user will have to insert number of units in the years 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2050. User can refer to the national reports, such as policy planning documents, national development strategies. It is generally a good practice to involve a representative group of national experts from different sectors, ministries, in development of list of mitigation options. This slide shows the approach used by GACMO tool to estimate emissions in the mitigation scenario. Emissions in the mitigation scenario is estimated as a difference between emissions in the business-as-usual scenario and total emission reduction from the selected mitigation options. The total emission reduction from all selected mitigation options by the user is the sum of emission reduction from each and individual mitigation option. Emission reduction of one mitigation option is estimated as a difference between emissions in the reference option and emissions in the reduction option. The approach follows CDM methodology, and it includes default technical and economical parameters from the CDM database. However, we recommend the users to review and adjust parameters for the country. This slide shows an approach for the calculation of emission reduction from the mitigation measure in the case of efficient lighting. Emission reduction from efficient lighting is estimated as a difference between emissions from the incandescent light bulbs and emission from the LED lamps. Similarly, emission reduction for other mitigation option is estimated. Now, let's move to the final part of this presentation, conclusions. To summarize, GACMO is a simple tool. It is easily adaptable to specific national context, used to make analysis of mitigation options and their effects in terms of greenhouse gas emission reduction in the context of NDC preparation or update. The GACMO calculations are transparent and easy to follow, in line with the methodologies established by IPCC and CDM. The GACMO tool allows to establish a business-as-usual projections by 2025, 2030, 2035 and 2050. GACMO tool allows to establish a mitigation scenario projections, percentage of reduction of GHG emissions in comparison with the business-as-usual scenario. GACMO tool allows to calculate the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the cost related to each mitigation option compared to the technology used as a reference. GACMO tool allows to play with the scale of application of any mitigation option to reach global reduction target. New version of the GACMO tool has an improved interface and follows stepwise approach. We hope you have found this video useful. If you are interested in using the GACMO tool, you can download the model on the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center website. The link is provided here and can be found in the video description. You can also contact us in case of any questions. The emails are provided here. If you want to learn more, you can watch the second video tutorial, which focuses on GACMO interface. Thank you for following this presentation.